I've made a career of working in great businesses at the wrong time, right? I was in financial services. I was actually on my way to the Taj Mahal over the weekend when our CPO sent in a note, or a CFO sent a note out to everybody and said, stop all travel, the market is tanking. And I was so glad I got that one last little trip in. And I think it was 2 years before I got on an airplane again. Johnson & Johnson, right? I learned a lot at J&J, but I never got to work for the Tylenol business or the one that was making all the money. I worked in Band-Aids, where Kimberly Clark was nipping at our heels. So even though you see great blue chip companies on my resume, the reality is they were all small margin businesses, and I never had money. I could never join all of those big, cool organizations that everybody goes to, the SIG conferences and corporate executive board. I got them for a little while till the market went down in financial services. So I got reasonably good at making things happen with not a lot of money, and that's what I'm going to talk about. Positive disruption on a limited budget. There's so much going on out there. There are so many big ideas that if we had a cell phone break and just had everybody sit here with their phones for 15 minutes, everybody would come up with something new and unique. But the road to the big idea can be a long one, right? And an expensive one. So Walmart and IBM can partner to use blockchain to measure the safety and the temperatures and the transportation of the pork that they sell as it goes around the world, right? The Department of Defense can use Watson, right? Artificial intelligence to help them do their RFPs and their procurement work because their manual's over 1,000 pages long. Now, I don't know about any of you, but I once had one that was 33, and that's only because I worked for a CFO who was like nuts, right? It should have been more like 15 pages. So the reality is I was never in that kind of a situation. I never had the money to do that kind of stuff, but you know, all the people who talked about cost reduction not being where it is, they're so right? The fun in this business is causing the disruption, is making the fundamental changes. So I've got some ideas. In fact, I'm so passionate on the concept of disruption that I did write a book about it. It'll be out in September. Anyway, when I was starting to research, to write the book, I started learning a lot about this gentleman at Harvard. Clayton Christensen is his name, right? He's sort of the father of disruption. And as he's defined it, right, companies offer a lot of products, have a lot of clients, customers, but over time, they start to focus on where it's most profitable. So they start, it's hard to do with a microphone, they start this with their client base, and more they service fewer and fewer people, right? So you look at the hotel industry that over the years developed lots of programs for the very profitable business traveler. And then Airbnb comes and they snatch the budget traveler away, right? Because they're not being taken care of by the big hotel chains. So I'm reading this and I'm thinking and I'm pondering and I'm educating myself. And I said, oh my God, that's what we do in procurement. We know how to do some things really well, and we service the heck out of our clients, right? All of the category managers here have an expertise in something, and you get good at it, you get better at it, you go to classes, you bring home savings, you bring home great ideas for your firm, but people tend to become experts, and as they become experts, they tend to become narrower and narrower. And as I looked at that, I said, ooh, well, okay, we focus on the largest spend areas too, right? When you're new, you go into a new company, you do a spend analysis, and you say, okay, what are the big spends? Where am I going to get the big savings? And there is a tendency to focus on that kind of stuff. So I said, oh, this is not good. How do we rethink ourselves as procurement before somebody comes along and disrupts us, right? One of the big things, I think those of us who are in leadership positions, right, those of us who go to companies and create organizations, or those of you who will do that someday, right, there's a tendency you go in, you do the analysis, you know what you need, you staff up, right? Well, maybe we have to rethink that model. That might have worked a long time ago, but the world's so dynamic and there's so much change taking place now. The rate of change is such that maybe you don't need all of the subject matter experts you think you do. Okay. You guys are in the apparel industry, right? I'm sure you need to know a lot about logistics. Somebody's got to be an expert in leather. Maybe those folks who are in the jewelry industry need to know a lot about buying gold or precious metals. There are some things that are fundamental to the value of your company. When I was at Diageo, flavors was so important. You could actually get the liquid for vodka from a whole lot of different places. Don't tell anybody I told you that, but there's a whole lot of different ingredients that can make a grain neutral spirit. But those flavor chemists at the flavor companies and the unique flavors that you were able to cobble together were gold to us, okay? So the times are changing, like I said, right? So somebody comes in and they know a lot about purchasing servers for the technology group, laptop servers, that kind of thing, right? Well, now it's all moving to the cloud and it's all virtualizing, and lots of companies are just giving their employees an allowance and saying, go buy your own device, right? So the need for that expertise isn't there anymore, okay? The print spend becomes email marketing. The person who knows a lot about how to put a rate card together for executive recruiters, right? Suddenly, that recruiting's being done through LinkedIn, and maybe the need for the service goes away entirely, right? So you've got this mix, if you will, in a business that has some amount of stuff that's really steady, really important, and then a whole lot of other stuff that's changing that maybe you should think of another way to deal with it on, okay? So my number one challenge is think about your operating model, right? Maybe it doesn't need to look like that anymore. Maybe it ought to look like this, right? Maybe it ought to look like some people focused on things that are really important and that are going to be there for the long run for your company, and then some plug and play, some folks who come in as subject matter experts when you need them, when a deal has to be negotiated, right? When you haven't looked at telecom for a long time and there's some questions and you don't know enough. I actually was saying, here I am, I'm number 5, nobody's going to be paying attention by the time I stand up. But I was so glad to hear Mark and Scott and Caitlin and the other speakers because I think this echoes and supports the very good points that you guys were making. So those of you in management slots, next time you go to a new company, think about that and think about how you might craft an organization that's a bit more nimble. The second challenge that I give you is challenge your processes. Now, some of you write in brand new companies. The challenge is more, as you set the processes up, think about what you're doing, right? And those of us who are in companies that are a little bit older, think about what we've done and what made sense 15 years ago. I talk a lot about the early adopters, right? Those folks who were out there and put in the big systems when they first started coming out 15, 20 years ago are dealing with these legacy systems that are so hard to manage. And you go around and you look at your employees, right? At lunchtime, people are wiring money to their kids in college. They're booking Airbnbs in Iceland, right? They're buying shoes and Zappos. How many times do you see the mail go by with Zappos boxes on it, right? They're using whatever app works for them to do and to run their lives. So lunch is over and they go back to work and everybody's screaming because they're following these crazy processes and somebody still hasn't approved this trip I have to go on and it's to negotiate this big deal and the factory's going to shut down if I don't do it. So you have to think about that. What can you stop doing, right? What is it that you think, or what is it that was important at some time that you don't have to do anymore? This picture is from an article published by a bunch of folks at Google who talked about the tech stop at Google. They did an analysis and said, gee, you know what? A lot of technology, a lot of peripherals flowing through here. Guess what? They are almost never refused. People put in requisitions. They are virtually always approved. So why are we bothering? Why not make sure we buy the right things and just leave them out for our employees to take, right? No approval, no wanding, no nothing. If you're on your way to China and you need an adapter, you go to the tech stop and you take it. So they took all of that bureaucracy, if you will, out of the system by setting that up. Some others have gone to vending machine type concepts, where you go and when you need something, you use the vending machine. For those people who don't recognize it, that's a postage stamp, right? So 15 years ago, someone walked in my office and said, hey, I just noticed something. We're spending all this money on express mail. Every day we've got all these documents going back and forth between us and this supplier. And guess what? I'm looking at it and I realize that supplier's 8 blocks away. Why are we doing that, right? And so we laughed about it. We made the change, and we stopped doing that. I didn't talk about that example for a long time because I figured, oh, that's, express mail, that's old news. 2 months ago, I'm at a conference where Walter Charles from Biogen is speaking. Now, Walter is really well known in the sourcing space as a mover and shaker, right? And he goes on and he's talking about these incredible contributions he's making to his company. And someone raises their hand and says, can you help me, though? You're talking about all these great results. What did you do to get these great results? What can I do when I go back? And no joke, the first words were, look at your express mail. And what he said was that they were sending patient records to partners around the globe, making the incorrect assumption that no one had technology like you had in the United States. Well, lo and behold, they found that virtually every country, every physician they were sending things to had a nightmare when they got that package from Biogen because they were having to take it and key it into their systems. So by sending them electronically, not only did they make it better for their clients, but they saved a bunch of money for themselves as well. So I bring it up because if Walter can bring it up, I can pass that along as you may think that's the last time somebody looked at that category. They took it all out, but maybe there's a little bit more left in there. Then there's office supplies. So one of my first assignments in procurement was office supplies. And I don't know, I saved $1 million. And the next year I saved another $1 million. But I think it was the same $1 million, right? Because we all know how that works. And we all know that we like labor with, oh, she wants like multicolored Post-it notes, but I can only let her have yellow, right? Because they're like 3 cents cheaper. Why are we bothering? Right? Go back to that first slide. You got blockchain, you got virtual supply chain, you have all that stuff. You've got myriads of government regulations and risks to deal with. Why are you spending time with that? Oops. This is a photo of the cabinet above my washing machine. And this was my husband's idea of a stocking stuffer a couple of Christmases ago, which I would not advise you to do because I certainly have had better over the years that I have been married to him. However, what this is for those people who haven't seen it, it's the Amazon Dash. Right? It sits there, you set it up through Amazon Prime, it works through your Wi-Fi, and when you're out of one of these items, you press a button and it places the order. Right? And a day or 2 days later, the box is there with what you need. So I keep going, why aren't businesses using that? So I talked to Amazon. I got on, their site, and they actually have an awful lot of basic supplies, copier paper, and things like that. Maybe, particularly if you're in a small business and you're just starting up, put a bunch of Amazon Dashes in a locked drawer and, have someone just press the button when you need something and be done with it and spend your time on stuff that's going to move the business forward. I would advise you to make sure that if you have any of these at home, that the cleaning lady knows she's not supposed to clean them too thoroughly, or a whole bunch of, that is like an honest to God true story. Okay, so I had such a hard time getting ready for this because I had 100 ideas to share. And in 10, I know I've gone over time, 12 minutes, I could only share 2. So think about how you're staffing. Think about what you're spending your time on. And maybe you can create a culture of self-disruption. So thank you.